Welcome to Dr. Dindi. This is a space where you get inspired and challenged to live an extraordinary life, the life that you deserve. So if you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or held back by procrastination, you're in the right place. This is a space where you'll get the tools that you need to really take that next step into an extraordinary life. Today is special. Today is really special because I'm going to be sharing with you guys the story of my life. And I'm doing this so that you can get inspired by some of the things that I have had to deal with, overcome, and how my life has turned out in terms of leaving an impact in the world. It's going to be a very vulnerable story. I hope to get through it without shedding a tear. If you do, the gentlemen, do not report me to Amerix. This is my life story. I grew up in a small village in Western Kenya. I like to say that the village was more known for being average than anything else. Nothing extraordinary happened in that village. Everybody seemed just to live a certain average life. There were no highlights. And because of the industry that was common at that time, we were in a farming community. The Kenya Seed Company employed a lot of the people that came from our school. So people knew after you finished primary school, you could always get employment there. And so many people did not go on to even high school. And then those that went to high school never came back to inspire we who were students in the school that I was in. So there wasn't that exciting something to look forward to. And so my ambitions were in keeping with what my environment looks like. And so for the first 3 years of my life, schooling life that is, I was not an outstanding student. So I was average. I was never fast. Class 1 to class 3, I was never fast. But something happened when I was 9 years old, in class 4. During the very first term, I got sick. And it happened that there was a mass that was on my neck that was compressing on the blood vessels that were supplying my brain. And so I would be playing outside and I would just fall down and pass out. And so my parents took me to the hospital. And those days, everything used to be malaria. Those of you who grew up a few decades ago in rural Kenya would understand this. So everything was malaria. If you had fever, it was malaria. If you're vomiting, it was malaria. If you're having headache, it was malaria. Even bad luck was blamed on malaria. And so the first time I went to hospital and there was this little swelling on my neck, it was said that I was having malaria. And those days, the treatment for malaria was one very nasty injection. Again, those people that grew up in the 80s, 90s would know. That injection was very painful. We called it chloroquine. And you'd be given a number of those. The specific dispensary where we used to go, I remember it so well because when we'd be playing football near the dispensary, we'd even be hearing the needles being boiled. Those days, needles were not used once and that was it. They would be reused. And so they would be used and then they would be boiled. That was the way in which they would be sterilized. So you'd be hearing these needles hitting each other when you're waiting on that bench and you'd feel like a person that is going to the hangman. It was crazy. And so I remember going in and being given these injections to treat the malaria that was affecting my neck. And those injections would affect your bottoms for a while. You'd be walking with a limp for a few days. Yet you'd have to go again and again and again for those. The sight of those green drips and the smell of that specific antiseptic solution, it used to be called GV, some bluish discoloration. I will never forget those. And so after being given a number of those injections, still the swelling on my neck was not going away. And so I was taken finally to the district hospital where I was scheduled to see the district surgeon. Now, we only had one surgeon for the whole district. And so it would take a while to finally get seen by this gentleman. I was finally seen. And the gentleman booked me for surgery. He said, I need an operation on my neck. And I remember being admitted and prepared for surgery. Day one, I was starved. As many of you know, when you're being prepared to go for an operation, you're not allowed to eat anything because you're going to get anesthesia. And so I was starved, ate nothing from morning until evening. And evening came and the doctor came to talk to me and he said, I'm so sorry. There were so many other emergencies. We not get to you. We'll try sort you out tomorrow. And so I ate finally dinner that evening. The next day, same story. Waited the whole day. And again, the surgeon came in the evening. Third day, same story. And by this time, I'm thinking, what is going on? You must understand, as a young man, 9 years old, and a Luya young man at that, being starved day by day, it was not going well with me. Long story short, it took a whole week for me to finally get surgery. And they operated on my neck, removed the mass that was there, and I recovered in the wards. Took some time for the wound to heal. And as I stayed in the ward and started having conversation with the medical team, especially that surgeon, I started having a very clear idea of what my life should pan out to be. Out of that painful experience was born a vision in my heart. I knew I needed to become a doctor. And not just any type of a doctor. I knew specifically I needed to become a surgeon. And I remember telling that surgeon, one day I will come back here as a doctor, as a surgeon, and I'm going to help you. He laughed it away, just like this 9-year-old dreams. And you can imagine my joy when I went back to that hospital decades later as a surgeon and was able to help this gentleman. That was deeply, deeply fulfilling for me. When I went back home as a 9-year-old, surgery done, I've now healed, I went back to school. I spent just a few weeks in school that term. But for the very first time, I became first in my class. It tells you a lot about the power of vision. Before, I was just drifting along life. As I've said a lot in this particular channel, it's about defeating the average lifestyle. It's about being extraordinary, exploiting your full potential. Now that I knew what I was meant to be, everything changed. The power of vision. I was never second again the whole of primary school. And at the end of class 8, I was the best student in our district. Now, that time, the member of parliament, I remember him visiting our school, and he said, anyone who's first in the district, the government is going to pay for your school fees. You do not need to worry. Your school fees will be fully paid for from 1 to Form 4, as long as you're the best student in the district. And so when I became best in our district, and I got an admission to Alliance High School, in my mind, I thought, we are set. No issues with fees. Everything is going to be amazing. We all know how our politicians are. That promise was never kept. And so I remember my father struggling from the get-go. In fact, out of the years in high school, it's only Form 1 first term that my fees was fully paid, because now my dad had taken a loan, and after paying that, the next term he was stuck. And I was sent home for the first time in second term of Form 1, and that became a pattern. I was sent home so many times. Sometimes I learned how to sneak back to school. You're sent home through this gate and you find your way back in, because I knew my dad could not be able to pay the high school fee. And that became my reality. I was sent home so many times. And I remember one time my mom came and she told me, next time you're sent home, I know you have some friends in the city, because every time you come home, it's very depressing for your father. So find a way, even if they send you home, go visit in one of your friends, then get your way back to school, but don't come home, because it's very depressing to your dad. And I understood it, because my dad really valued education and he was so proud of me. And he felt so bad that he was not being able to pay my school fees. And so when I would be sent home, I got some friends where I started to go. And even when I was home, I never lost the vision. I still took time, worked hard. And at the end of my schooling, I remember very well the last term of Form 4, those of you who remember a gentleman called Ambrose Adongo and the fights that he was having with government, there was a protracted teacher strike. I had already been sent home, then there was that long strike. And so I remember when I went now to do my exams, my dad called me and he told me, whatever grade you get, I understand the challenges that you've had, but you go and do your best. But the vision was my true north. And I passed my exams and was called in to do medicine. Taking you back a little to where my medical journey changed, it actually still happened in high school. When I was in Form 2, one of my friends started getting sick. This gentleman had, we didn't know at that time, but later on we were told that he had a problem with his heart. So he would be getting tired very quickly. He'd not be running with the rest of us. We used to do something that we call draining, where you go very quickly to the dining hall and take your tea and the tea also of the table next to you. So when people come to to the dining hall, they don't find any tea. A lot of fun as Form 2s. We called it draining. So this gentleman was not moving as fast. He was taken to hospital. And I remember the day when they actually came, the principal came to tell us that this gentleman, his name was Maseki, told us he's passed on. And so that was very, very painful for me because Maseki was a great friend. And when he passed on and the principal said he died of a hole in his heart, then my vision became even clearer. I knew that this is what I was called to do. I was not only called to be a doctor, not only called to be a surgeon, but I was called to be a heart doctor. And I would spend my days fixing people's hearts so that no other young person would have to end up the way my friend Maseki did, where he lost his life because he had a hole in his heart. And so I knew this is what I had to do. Probably a year or so ago, this particular story came so sharply in focus. I remember I was doing some surgical operation. I was operating on someone's heart a few years ago, and I kept thinking of my friend Maseki. And the reason why I was doing what I was doing was because of his inspiration. And although it had been about 27 years since he had passed on, I had not forgotten about him. And so almost 2 years ago, I went online and I said, the person that inspired me to do what I'm doing was one young man that was called Maseki. And I was just trying to find his family. I was trying to connect with his family. I just wanted to visit the place where he had been laid to rest. It had been 27 years. Surprisingly, one gentleman that was living in the US, who had been part of our class, had kept the obituary piece from the newspaper with him. He traveled with it when he went to the US, and he had kept it with him for all those years, 27 years, he had kept it with him. And so when he saw the story, he sent me that small piece and he said, I've kept this all these years. Maybe this can help you find the family. And when I got it, it had the name of the family, the village where the family came from, and I shared it online. And thank God for the magic of social media, I was able to connect with the family. And I would never forget the feeling I had in my heart when I called and Maseki's dad picked from the other end and we talked. And he invited us. We went, we visited the family. And I remember visiting the place where my friend was laid to rest. And just, yeah. When we engaged with the family, we made a request. We told them, can we do a foundation in his honor? And we called it Maseki Heart Foundation. And this foundation is to help people with heart disease get the care that they need. And that is something that we've been working on for the last few years, sorting out registration and aspects like that. But it was a deeply meaningful moment for me. After high school, I went to study medicine, long training, 6-year course, finished that. Again, just the power of vision keeping me focused. Then after that, worked as a medical officer for a few years, then went to do general surgery. Now, our days, you could not just get into heart surgery straight. You had to do 5 years of general surgery first, training. And so after 6 years of medical school and almost 4 years as a general practitioner, I went back and did 5 years of general surgery, then worked for a while as a general surgeon, then now got an opportunity to do training as a heart surgeon, training that took another 3 years. Then got an opportunity to go to Australia to do fellowship again in heart surgery. Long journey. In fact, my daughter the other time was laughing at me and she was saying, I've been studying medicine longer than she has been alive. It's just the path that we have to take, because when you're taking care of people's health, you really have to be good at what you do. When I was in Australia, another major fork in my life arrived because we were working at a good hospital, being paid very well, and there came an opportunity to decide to leave and work and stay permanently in Australia instead of coming back to Kenya. And when I was having that discussion with my wife, and we're just looking at the possibilities for ourselves and our family, and it would have been amazing to stay and work in Aussie. But I remembered Maseki, and I remembered that I was called to work in Africa. Just to put some bit of perspective, the hospital I was working in Melbourne, St. Vincent Hospital, had more heart surgeons in that one hospital than the whole of our country combined. And so I felt, yes, I was helping people, serving patients, and that was a good thing. But back home, the need was greater. We still have a huge gap of care. Recently, I looked at a paper that had come from Ethiopia. Ethiopia has a population of 120 million people, and they were just having 5 heart surgeons. That's the reality in Africa. There are African countries where we don't even have one heart surgeon. Not even one. Many countries in Africa. And so I felt it's important to come back and engage and see what can we do together. I really believe in African solutions for African problems. And so as a son of Africa, I felt it's important to come back and see what we can do to not only help our people from a curative standpoint, but how can we build the practice of heart surgery, cardiac surgery, especially in this part of the world. And so we came back and have been engaging for a while now, worked in a hospital in the rural area, currently working here in the city. So my passion is around helping people get healthy, especially from a heart perspective. But beyond that, I'm also very passionate about helping people live their best lives. And so when I'm not operating on hearts, I'm also touching hearts in other ways, where I engage with people, especially busy professionals who feel overwhelmed, who feel that they don't have that clarity about the steps they need to take to lead an extraordinary life. I have been blessed to live an extraordinary life. From that young man in an obscure village in Western Kenya to working at a first world facility as a heart surgeon, and to now what I'm doing, where I inspire multitudes across the world. I've been invited to speak in different continents, where I speak about inspiration. What does it take to live an extraordinary life? That is what I'm about. I've been so blessed, and I feel now it is time to give back, to inspire people, to help people see the possibilities of their lives. When I look at my life, where I came from to where I am, I know that for each and every one of us, there is a path to greatness. Greatness does not mean that you'll be seen by the masses or celebrated by the masses, but greatness means living out the potential that you are born with. For each of us in our DNA is etched a map to greatness. Each of us, you're here because you're necessary. And I'm hoping that as I share my story, as you think about the journey I've had, may you start to get back, essentially put a fingerprint on the greatness that you are born to experience. The world needs you. There are solutions that are in you that this world requires. Why are you settling for a mediocre lifestyle? Many professionals feel this way. You know, there is much more. There's much more that is untapped in you. There's much more that is remaining stifled. You are stuck in a career that you know is not what you're born to do. Is there a way out? And through this channel, I'll be shouting from the rooftops that yes, there is a way in which you can start to allow the world to experience the greatness that you know exists within. As I like to end all my engagements, birds don't ask for permission to fly. The fish do not ask for permission to swim. The flowers, they just bloom. Do not ask for anyone's permission to be extraordinary. That is what you are called to do. That is etched in your DNA. Ladies and gentlemen, go out and change the world. And if you've enjoyed today's segment, like, subscribe, hit that notice button, share these stories so that together we can build a new generation that is going to inspire our nation. It's going to inspire our continent. Africa, it is our time to arise.